Good evening, everybody. It's Steve with Real Progressives. Tonight, we're going to talk about the national debt. I was looking on Twitter earlier, and Bill Cimbrello is out there. He's got a great platform. He's talking MMT. He got Tim Canova out there, attaboying him as he gets endorsed by Warren Mosler. And then there's this really sweet lady that comes into the Twitter feed, and she says, "Wow, Bill, I didn't know you were an MMTer. I'm going to have to rethink my support for you now." And I couldn't think of any other thing to talk about tonight more important than dispelling this myth of the national debt and just sort of having a chat about it. This isn't anything formal. In fact, I really didn't want to go live tonight. I was kind of enjoying laying around the house, because I've got so much to do on unemployment these days. But this right here is an important subject, and so we're going to talk about it. So let's talk about what is the national debt. The national debt, I believe, is around $21 trillion right now. And, to us people that don't have 5 cents in our pocket, $21 trillion sounds like a lot of money. But 21 trillion isn't really that much money, and it's not even really debt when you understand what it's all about. Maybe it's more a question of what is debt, right? So the 21 trillion amounts to the sum total of every single untaxed dollar in existence today. That's it. It's every untaxed dollar in existence today. So if you got rid of the national debt, let's talk about what would happen to the dollars in your and my pocket. We would have no money in the economy. This term debt is something when you're looking at a balance sheet and you have debits and credits, you have an IOU. Well, what is a dollar? The dollar is the government's unit of account. It has to have a debt associated with it to drive its usage. Some sort of debt, could be a tax, could be something else. But what we've done is we call this thing the national debt, and we sell treasuries and we sell other things to take money out of the economy. It's kind of like one of these archaic gold standard operations. We really could stop selling debt instruments altogether right now if the bond vigilantes and others that like to have the wealthy get a basic income wanted to shut it down. The reality is it's nothing. Every dollar is really a tax credit. You'll hear Warren Mosler talk about, there was no unemployment until the first dollar was out there, because once the first dollar went out there, you had to issue a tax. And once you had to issue a tax, you had the first unemployed person, because in order to get the dollar to pay the tax, you had to do something to get it. So people went out and did whatever they had to do to get that dollar to go ahead and pay their tax. Because you have to spend before you can tax, because otherwise, where'd the first dollar come from? You see how simple this is? Anyway, so if you were to reduce the debt, you'd be reducing the amount of money in supply. You'd be reducing the amount of money in circulation, period. Now, you probably think that we can just target the rich, right? Now, if they're just going to willingly give up that money, it's irrelevant because it doesn't pay for anything. What happens? Let's talk about how we get these debt instruments, how we sell bonds and stuff like that for just a second. When China does business with the U.S., China brings its goods and services to market here in the United States through middlemen or through their own storefronts or online sales or whatever trade and commerce they do, be it raw materials or goods and services. And they're paid in US dollars. Now, what does China do with all the US dollars they get for sales to the American markets? Well, they'll typically leave that money in the US, and they have a choice. They can either earn a small interest, or they can go ahead and just leave it sit there, or they can bring them back home and use dollars in China. And if you've ever been to China, you can go barter and go through some of the different shops and markets, and you can use US dollars. They'll take dollars there. A lot of them will anyway. I think when I went there, the exchange rate was like 7 to 1. 7 Chinese yuan for 1 US dollar. But anyway, it doesn't matter. The point is that it's not really debt at all. It's just existing US dollars that China has, and they choose to buy short-term or long-term treasuries, bonds with their US dollars, not their China money that we're borrowing. We're not borrowing foreign debt. They're taking their US dollars and they're buying treasury bonds with them to earn whatever that percentage rate is. It's not debt like you and I know it today. And after a little while, once the light bulb goes on with this, it's going to really tear you up when you hear people talk about the national debt. It's going to make you get angry and cranky after a little while, because it's so simple to understand. People think that we're actually going over to China going, guys, we're short on US dollars. China, can you please give us some US dollars? We're out of US dollars. The United States government's going bankrupt. It's just out of US dollars. Now, part of the problem is a lot of people running around saying stupid things about the only thing federal about the Federal Reserve is the name. It's about as federal as Federal Express. But the truth is that the Federal Reserve was written into existence by the United States Congress. It didn't come to take over the world. It was written, the law was written, just like the Bank of Japan has a central bank, just like the Bank of England has a central bank. Bank of Australia has a central bank. It's almost to the point, where you got to really not want to get this to say it anymore. You got to really choose to not want to get it, to not get it. It's like a personal choice not to get this now. So as all this political gamesmanship to talk about the national debt, to make people who are petrified of their own debt fear the federal government serving their needs, naturally they talk about the federal debt. The national debt is at an all-time crisis. He's on the 18th green. Oh, Lauren, it looks like he's going to take out. Oh, he's got a pitching wedge on the green. National debt. It's what's for dinner. This is the stuff. After a little while of hearing people say it, it really will start tearing you apart, because you understand that it's not debt at all. I mean, I think the Treasury paid out. I think I have it up here. Let's see. I have it on my phone anyway. There's some ridiculous amount. It's like in the trillions that they pay out daily. Goodness gracious, if I could only see it. It's so small. But it's like, let me read this out loud. Redemptions to date, 90 trillion, 558 billion, 263 million. That's 90 trillion paid back in a single year. Okay, 90 trillion in 1 year. Yeah. Where'd that money come from? Did it come from your tax dollars? Come on, tell the truth. Do you think it came from your tax? You think we tax $90 trillion? Do you really? Seriously, it's okay to say you know it. It's okay to say you don't know what's going on. 90 trillion was paid out in 1 year. Where'd that money come from? Seriously. Ask yourself, where'd that 90 trillion come from? You think that 90 trillion came from your tax dollars, right? You think your hard-earned tax dollars paid that 90 trillion. I think we have, 350 million people in the United States. 90 trillion in 1 year paid off in interest on a big deal. Give me a break on treasuries. It's stupid. Come on. We're talking about interest, and we're talking about investments, and we're talking about keystrokes. Do you realize our government has budgeted the interest on these loans or these bonds or whatever? They do this for a reason. By selling bonds, they're trying to control the interest rates, the overnight rate for bank lending. They set a target rate. If they're going to miss it, they sell bonds. That raises the rate to wherever they need it to be to meet that target interest rate. So you don't like the debt, right? You don't like this national debt thing because it's scary business. Scary bank accounts, scary interest on the bank accounts. So let's go with a zero interest rate policy forever. Warren Mosler advocates for it. Every MMTer I know advocates for it. Why wouldn't you advocate for a zero interest rate policy? Think about it. It's because the people that have the money up top want to make an income. They want to get their basic income. They want to park their money there and just earn money doing nothing. It just sits there and just earns interest on them. But it's not being paid for by tax dollars. That's not how this works. Do you think you can remember this when this live stream ends? Do you think that you'll be able to take this to other people and really understand that the national debt is a joke? I mean, I'd love to make it a James Bond novel. I'd love to really, really spin up a big yarn. The national debt has been around forever. It's not a big deal. There was one chart that I was going to show you. I couldn't find it in time, so I'll find it some other time. But it showed every time some knucklehead got their way and tried to pay off the debt, that the country went into a massive, massive recession or depression. In my opinion, and I'm a bit harsh, I'm not going to lie. In my opinion, I think it should be a criminal activity. I think those who talk about the national debt, especially politicians, you give them one shot at getting it right. You explain it to them. If they refuse to understand, I consider them to be economic terrorists. I consider them to be criminals. I consider them to be murderers. I think the Pete Peterson Foundation should be closed down. I think those people who support Fix the Debt are incredibly evil, not misguided. I wish I could say misguided, but they know. Because see, by the way of doing this, the haves, they have. The little people, they struggle, and they know it. This is not a secret. They know it. But every year we hear about the national debt. Every time we hear about it, every time we hear some knucklehead saying they're going to blow up the deficit. I mean, how many people have to die to keep that myth alive? Do you care about those people dying? I know I do. That drives me every day. I want to know, for real, do you think those people are murderers? Seriously, think about this. When you reduce the spending, when you try and cut the debt, when you stop spending on the people, the things that we need, and it's all in the name of some fake fear porn, national debt. And the people die. Who's responsible for that? I'm serious. Who's responsible for that? Those deaths are not an accident. They didn't just die of natural causes in old age. No, somebody's guilty. Somebody is guilty. There is a real murderer out there. There may be many real murderers out there, and they're the ones that want to fix the debt. If you don't understand this, if you laugh, Gigi, you're probably one of them too. Although since you don't get to vote, I'll just call you a murderer by proxy. The national debt is when China or any other person that buys these bonds, socks their bonds, they buy these bonds, they sock their money away. They're existing US dollars. You realize you cannot buy a bond in a foreign denominated currency. You can only buy it in US dollars. Why do you think that is? Think about this for a minute. Could you buy war bonds in foreign currency? You couldn't. The reason for that was back in World War II, we're selling bonds. Why? We were selling bonds because we had an economy that was overheating. Every factory in America was at 100% capacity. In fact, you could go so far as to say they were working beyond capacity. Every man, woman, and child was either fighting in the war or working in the factory. We were at total full employment and max capacity. Any more money going out there, and you're going to have inflation. So to put the brakes on an overheating economy, they sold war bonds to prevent the economy from overheating in the midst of one of the greatest revivals in American history, unfortunately fueled on the backs of soldiers fighting across the sea in Europe and Japan and all over Africa, you name it. The national debt is a joke. It's nothing. It's just an accounting game. Just like fearing about Social Security. It's just a spreadsheet. It's not real. This is not some, oh shit, we ran out of US dollars again. I'm going to put up a couple of things real quick because these are common misperceptions. And I want to make sure that you all get a good view of this because it's important. So this right here, limits of federal spending. Ask yourself, think about this. Take a peek at this. I want you to ask yourself, seriously, what is this? Do you understand what you're looking at? I mean, for me, when I see this, all I can think about is these are all the lies we've been told. You know, we've been told all this stuff. You know, we should be spending through the nose. You know, is it possible to waste federal spending? Sure it is. I mean, you spend things on, spend on things that we really shouldn't do. That's misappropriation of funds. But it's certainly not a waste of taxpayer dollars because taxes are deleted. You know, do you think the US government can ever run out of pieces of paper or keystrokes? No, but it can run out of real resources. Folks, you know, the answer to the question that every knucklehead in the world asks all these politicians, every one of them, is how are you going to pay for it? Now I want you to look at this real quick, and I want you to get this through your head. This right here is the answer every single time when you ask a congressional candidate, a Senate candidate, anyone at the national level, how are you going to pay for it? I wish I could make this complex. God, I wish I could make this super twisty, turny, Rothschild, this Soros, that, blah, blah, blah. Make it boogie, woogie, 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 woogie. But it's just that simple. Congress authorizes spending, congressional appropriations. Now, I'm going to put one more thing up here real quickly, because this is the bane of our existence, right? Everyone comes up with the Zimbabwe, Weimar Republic, right? I mean, think about this. Why do you think people always, and we're not just the politicians, folks, we're talking about rank and file, regular Americans, you and I. Why do you think people don't understand how federal financing works? But damn it, if they can't say the word Zimbabwe 3 times. And what's worse, how many of these people can actually pronounce the name Weimar Republic? I mean, you don't know about Weimar Republic unless you've been listening to like Alex Jones. I mean, it's like, these hyperinflation stories, they're like things you tell kids, you're going to get a lump of coal in your stocking this year. if you're not a good boy or girl. So you better be good. We're going to give you a good old Zimbabwe, Venezuela. Fact is, and I'm going to put my mugshot in here so you can see the smile on my face. These hyperinflations that you hear about, that's nothing to do with national debt. It's got nothing to do with printing money. It's got to do with the fact that some sort of political strife, be it like in Weimar, for example, they had just gotten their clocks cleaned in World War I. Germany was just totally decimated. And the Treaty of Versailles didn't seek just for retribution. It wanted to punish them. And damn it if it didn't punish them good. The Treaty of Versailles was so brutal, so soul-crushing. They made all the debt payable, not in German Reichsmarks, but in French francs. So we always say in MMT land that no sovereign nation that issues its own currency can go broke on debt denominated in its own currency. But Weimar didn't have debt denominated in German Reichsmarks. It had debt denominated in French francs. And France wasn't trying to play around. They remembered what the Germans did. They were ready. They wanted to make them suffer. Little they know that they would create the grounds and the situation for the rise of Adolf Hitler. And that right there is not Godwin's law. That's literal history right there. So I want to bring up something else too. And this is the guy that we all know and love, Alan Greenspan. This is a super duper neoliberal dude, former Fed chairman. But the fact is, he may have been an asshole. He may have been a neoliberal. But this is straight truth right here. The issuer of the currency can always pay. The government cannot become insolvent with respect to obligations in its own currency. A fiat money system like the one we have today can produce such claims without limit. Do you understand? Do we understand? Yes, great call, Nick. He said this under oath. Please, dear God, tell me that this will stick in your head, that you will remember this forever. But anyway, back to the Zimbabwe thing for a minute. The German production had been completely decimated by the war. They were unable to meet the demands of the people. And so they couldn't produce enough to meet the supply wasn't there. The demand was. And so they were bringing buckets of cash to buy a loaf of bread. That's not going to happen in the US, number one, because we don't have debt denominated in a foreign currency. But the other reason is that we have the productive capabilities and we have massive resources to meet the needs of the people. Now in Zimbabwe, which is the one we're talking about on the screen right now anyway, I'm going to move from Weimar to Zimbabwe. Mugabe took away the farmland from the white colonizers and gave it to the native Zimbabweans, or however you say that. And unfortunately, they weren't trained to farm. Their productive capacity dropped to near zero. They had no exports. They had no infrastructure. They had basically agriculture. And they couldn't feed their people. And it got so bad that they had a hyperinflation. You realize none of this has anything to do with printing money. Printing money, the issue of printing money, if you will, comes along after the fall. What do you think about people that fan the flames of hyperinflation? How does it make you feel about them knowing that it's not anything to do with printing money? How do you feel about people that do that, that literally hold you back from having a new deal? An entire party, the Green Party, talks about the national debt and wanting to end the debt and end the private Federal Reserve and all this other stuff because they don't know any better. It's in their national platform. Fanning the fears of national debt, Section M, look it up. In fact, we had PhDs, doctors, Dr. Fidel Kaboub, Dr. Joe Firestone. They both worked with the Green Party. And they rewrote their horrific plank on the national debt. And do you know what the Green Party did at their national meeting? No joke. Their delegates rejected it. Every one of them. I mean, well, not every one of them. There was a few stragglers in there. Very small contingent led by Rodolfo Cortez, Eric Rydberg, and a few others. That's pretty pathetic, isn't it? This is the kind of stuff that keeps us from ever having a new deal. And it's shameful. It is. I mean, I wish that I could kind of try and make it an easier, softer, kinder thing. But I can't. I just can't. I'm pretty daggone frustrated with the recalcitrance of individuals that are inept at economics, that have things to say about economics, and they say it with authority. Oh, yes. So why is all this fear about the national debt? Why does this keep coming up? Well, number one, we got about 50 people plus or minus in this live stream. Probably, I don't know, maybe a couple thousand will watch it by the time it's run its course. And then they'll watch MSNBC, or they'll watch TYT, or they'll watch Jamarl Thomas, or they'll watch Nico, or they'll watch, any of these other, Tim Black, Jimmy Dore, any of them. They're not going to talk about it. In fact, when the headline says national debt, they'll be right there. Oh my God, the national debt. Oh my God. What do you do with that? I don't know. I don't know what you do with that. I've tried. I've tried for years. No matter how many times we talk about it, they just think they're smarter than the average bear, and they just refuse any kind of knowledge. Literally refuse it. Probably pretty nice guys, nice dancers. I bet you they can write a hell of a poem. A couple of them probably can pick a neat, mean banjo. I don't know. But they don't know shit about economics. And that's a problem, because economics is ground zero of a progressive revolution if we ever going to have one. And unfortunately, we haven't been able to count on them to tell the truth about economics. We haven't been able to count on them to be honest about economics. Why is that? I'm serious. I'm sure they're all nice people. I mean, they probably love their kids and love their families and everything else. So it's not an issue of their evil or anything like that. But they are helping evil. They are assisting evil. Every time you get paralyzed by the words national debt, the chances of us getting a new deal fall further and further away. Now, for me, that's a problem, because my goal is to have a new deal. That's my goal. My goal is to bring about an economic revolution where we don't have a revolution really at all. We just learn how it works and we make shit happen. Heck of a lot easier than us guys throwing stones at Apache helicopters, right? But damn it, they want to put the fist in the air. They want a revolution. Yeah. Okay. They must know something I don't know, right? I just know economics. What the hell? Can you imagine people dying over a false understanding of economics? if we were able to get out of this national debt nonsense and really, really dump huge sums of money into research and development within the public sector, not the private sector where they're making capitalized, big time profits, but where the government has no profit motive. Can you imagine if we invested huge sums of money in green energy research and we were able to retrofit every smokestack, every car, everything, and go to sustainable energy so we don't have any concerns for these wars for oil, right? Wars for oil, wars for resources. If we understood this, we could force that. But people that say they're anti-war only want to yell about being anti-war. They don't want to learn how to actually affect their desire. They don't want to learn. They refuse. They refuse to learn. They don't want to. It's not as exciting. It's far more exciting to wear a bandana wrapped around your face, holding a Molotov, doing the pose that you see in the tattoos, It's much cooler to do that than it is just to learn about economics and fix this shit. I don't know. I guess we each have different values, huh? Maybe we can change. Maybe we can change them. I don't know. But it's going to take a hell of a lot more than 46 people to do it. That's for damn sure. But the spicier, the more salacious, the more enticing it is to people. And the truth is just not as sexy as a lie. And unfortunately, people do more for a lie than they do the truth. That's a damn shame. That's a damn shame, isn't it? You think about healthcare. I'm going to say something wildly unpopular. Fancy that. Medicare for all is largely a neoliberal thing. It's corporatism. Once again, it's the federal government being the single payer to private entities. In a way, it's the best of both worlds, right? The private entities get made whole, the people get made whole, and everybody's happy. But the reality is, what if healthcare wasn't profit-driven? What if we decided that that was just simply a benefit of being a human being? And we created a national health service full of scientists actually researching, without profit motive, researching even diseases that affect tiny, tiny percentages of the population, like the one that killed my father, progressive supranuclear palsy. It's one of those things with just not enough dying going on to make it worthwhile to profit from. That's a shame. We could invest so much. We could do so many great things. But we're stuck on this national debt. I mean, even Richard Wolff runs around whining and fanning flames about the national debt. He knows, but he should know better. It's a political football, and they use it for power, not for serving people, not for serving truth, for power. We can eliminate their ability to do bad things if we talk about the debt. We can eliminate their ability to do tax cuts or this, that, and the other by talking about the deficit. They don't care that when it's their turn, the same sword will kill them too. They never care that if they don't get out of their own way, we're never going to have anything done. And then you get the vote blues. He's divisive. He's sitting there talking economics. Why isn't he talking about our candidates? Oh, he's just a splitter. Please. I'm for the 99%. I'm not here. You're sitting there playing your little reindeer games and your little parties. I want everybody to win. Who's the splitter? Who's the fucking splitter? Seriously. I'm going to say it's the party first people. Not the truth first people, but the party first people. Republicans have this inherent need for fairness, not fairness like as in making everybody equal, but fairness as in if you didn't stay up late on Friday night doing your homework, you should suffer too, because I stayed up late Friday night and I did do my homework, and therefore, right? And I can understand that to some degree. There's nothing worse than carrying a load of 50 people behind you that don't show up and put the jersey on to do the freaking activism work. You throw them on your back and you lug through it. People are shooting darts at you, screaming at you, calling you names, talking shit about you, and you're carrying the sack of people that ain't doing nothing. You're like, ah, ah. So I kind of understand where the Republicans get that sometimes, right? But that's no basis for an economic system. You know, nobody wants to have to carry the full load. That's not right. But yet, a lot of times that's the way it is, isn't it? I can tell you firsthand it is. So when you look at this, you got to realize the battlegrounds. Republicans want fairness, but not really fairness. They want to be able to keep winning because they had a leg up in life. Or worse, they didn't have a leg up in life, but they don't want to be seen as the guy who was born in poverty. They always want to be an embarrassed millionaire waiting to happen. An embarrassed future millionaire. So you got to kind of know where they're coming from so you can kind of find out how to get to them, so you can make the case that this national debt stuff is really hurting them too. Because when we take money out of the economy, everybody gets gut punched, right? Except for the wealthy. They just wait for us to circle the drain, and then they come save us for pennies on the dollar. National debt has been a great weapon against the people, hasn't it? It's probably the biggest stumbling block of them all to get us where we need to be. Anyway, national debt is nothing more than the sum total of every untaxed dollar in existence. To reduce the debt is to get rid of money from the economy. To get rid of the debt is to eliminate money in the economy at all. Because money is debt. It's just debt. It's an IOU. When you present this dollar to someone, it's expected to get $1 of something for it. And when you present it back to the government, by definition, the government is the monopolist and is also the price setter. It is worth exactly $1 of tax. And that's it. That's why it's called debt. So don't let it scare you anymore. I'm Steve Grumbine with Real Progressives. Have a good night, everybody.